Hello and welcome back to another video. And in today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to look at three different VTP settings that we can enable on our switches to allow the switches to share their VLAN information with each other. Now there's three different settings that we have. We have server mode, which is going to be enabled by default on every switch. We have transparent mode, which is going to take the VLAN information, but it's not going to apply it to its own VLAN database. It's only going to pass it on to the next switch. And then you have client mode, which then receives the VLAN information and puts that information into its VLAN database. So I want to show you a little bit, real quick, how that works with this quick little lab. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign this top switch to be our server. I'm going to assign this middle switch to be our transparent, to be in transparent mode, so that it will not keep any of the information that it gets. And then the bottom switch I'm going to assign as a client because I want it to update its VLAN information. So the first thing that I'm going to do in this switch up here is I'm going to go into global configuration and I'm going to type in VTP mode server. Now again, if I hit enter here, it's going to say I'm already a server, because that's default VTP. Now the important thing to remember here is that everything by default is a server. So whenever you're configuring your domain, you want to make sure that you put it in the correct mode first before you configure the domain. Otherwise it can cause all kinds of issues in your network with your VLANs. I'll explain that in a second when I get to transparent, when I get to this next switch. But for the server, we're going to do VTP mode server, and we're going to name the domain for VTP, and we're just going to call that lab. And then we are going to set a password by typing in VTP password, and we'll just give it a password of lab as well. Now if we do show VTP status, we can now see that our switch is set up as a server and is in the domain for lab. All right. So that is all we need to do on this switch currently. If we want to, we can do a show VLAN and see what VLANs we currently have. We currently have 3 VLANs configured according to our 3 VLANs here. So now let's go into switch 2. And this one, again, remember, we want to set this one as transparent, which means we do not want it to do anything with the VTP information that it gets. We only want it to pass it on. So if we go into configuration terminal, into global configuration, we're going to type VTP mode first, because if I went VTP domain, it would immediately be set as server. So let's try it. VTP domain lab and VTP password as lab. And if I do a show VTP status, we will see that it is in server mode. If I was in a situation of a live environment where I did not want the switch to pick up any VLANs, there's a possibility that if this was a fresh switch with no VLANs on it, it could then update the other switches in the domain and wipe all the VLAN information off of those switches. Instead of receiving the VLAN information, it would send out the VLAN information and cause all kinds of issues in your network, and then you will be accidentally wiping VLAN databases off of other switches. So it's important here to specify the mode first, VTP mode transparent. So now if I do a show VTP status, we can see that we are in VTP mode transparent in the lab domain, which was automatically updated from the other switch, but we're just setting it anyway. All right, so now let's go set up the switch 3 as a client. VTP mode client, VTP domain lab, VTP password lab. Do a show VTP status, shows us that we are now set up in the VTP domain lab, and we are operating as a client on this lab switch 3. So now let's do a little testing with this and go to lab switch 1 and create a VLAN. If we want to create, let's just create VLAN 150. All right, let's look at our VLAN table, VLAN database. VLAN database here is showing we have VLAN 150 created. Now let's go to Lab Switch 2 and look at its VLAN database. It's in the same VTP domain, but Lab Switch 2 is set up as transparent. Show VLAN. We have no VLAN 150. That is exactly what we want. But what does Switch 3 have? Show VLAN. Switch 3 has an updated VLAN for VLAN 150, meaning VTP has done its job, and Switch 2 has done its job by not putting VLAN 150 into its VLAN database, but it has passed it on to Switch 3. And we can try this a couple more times with lots of different VLANs. So VLAN 200, we already have 200. VLAN 600. Let's go to the configuration. VLAN 600. Let's spell it right. VLAN 600, VLAN 700, VLAN 701, VLAN 900. Ooh, it's 9,000. VLAN 9,000. VLAN 900, VLAN 52. Okay, so do show VLAN shows all the different VLANs that we just entered in there. 600, 700, 701, 900, and we put 52 up here. And there's 150. Go to our switch set in transparent, do another show VLAN. We have not received those VLANs and put them in our database because this is currently set as transparent. Go to switch 3, do another show VLAN, and what do we get? We get 900, 701, 700, 600, 300, 200 we already had, 150 we added a minute ago, and 52. So that is the basics of VTP and how VTP works with server mode, transparent mode, and client mode. Thanks for watching.